All right, Algebra 1, we are getting ready for our Chapter 9 test over quadratics. Okay, so this is very, very similar to your actual test, so be sure to pay close attention and ask questions if you have them. So the very first thing you want to do when you're trying to graph, solve by graphing, is to find the axis of symmetry. So the formula for that is x equals negative b over 2a. And we use that to find the axis of symmetry and then find the vertex from that x value. Okay, so let's start by doing that. Okay, so I've got a is 1, b is 6, and c is 8. So x equals negative 6 for b, 2 times a, which is 1. And so I end up with negative 6 over 2, which is negative 3. And that is my axis of symmetry. So x equals negative 3 for that, which goes right in the middle of my table. And now I can go ahead and use that to find the vertex. So I'm going to plug that in to our equation in order to find it. So y equals blank squared. So that's negative 3 squared plus 6 times negative 3 plus 8. And so when I plug that in, I'm using my calculator to go ahead and type that in. So blank's negative 3 squared. So in my calculator, I'm going parentheses negative 3 squared plus 6 parentheses negative 3 plus 8. And I get negative 1. And so that's negative 1 for my vertex. And now I'm basically plugging in the rest of them that are above and below that. So negative 2 and negative 1 up here, negative 4 and negative 5 down there. And remember, these are symmetrical, so I really don't have to plug in everything, just the next one. So negative 2 is my next one. Since I already have it typed in, I just take that and make it a 2. So negative 2 and negative 2 there. And I get 0. So I've got 0 and 0. Now I just plug in negative 1 or negative 5. So here's negative 1. And I get 3. So 3 goes there and there. And so now I'm ready to go ahead and graph it. So negative 3 is left 3, down 1. That's also my axis of symmetry, so I'm going to go ahead and draw that in as well. And now we can go ahead and plot the other points. So negative 2, 0 is right here. Negative 4, 0 is right here. And then I've got negative 1, 3, which is right here. Negative 5, 3, which is right here. And now I have my parabola. So what I also know right away is that those 2 points are my solutions. So I can go through and answer all these questions now. Obviously it opens up. It's a minimum because that is a bottom point. If it's a top point, that's a maximum. So minimum. The domain we don't really need to worry too much about. That's x values. You can plug in any x value and get an answer, so that's all real numbers. The range value is the y value, so nothing below negative 1. So in that case, y is greater than or equal to negative 1. And the solutions are either those 2 x values on the graph that cross the x-axis or the 2 x values where the y is 0. So either way, your answers are going to be negative 2 and negative 4. And there we go. So the other 2 parts of this paper are solving the same equation using the different methods. So x equals, and the b value is 6. So negative 6 plus or minus 6 squared minus 4 times a, which is 1, c, which is 8. All of that over 2 times a, which is 1. And so once again, I'm going to take these three parts separately. So the first one is just -6. The bottom part is just 2. And then this I'm going to put in my calculator. So parentheses 6 squared minus 4 times a, which is 1, c, which is 8. And I end up with 4. So square root of 4 there. So if you take the square root of 4 either in your calculator or in your head, you end up with 2. So it's -6 plus or minus 2 divided by 2. And remember, don't divide until you actually add those together. So -6 plus 2 is -4 divided by 2. -2 minus 2 is -8 divided by 2. And when I divide, I get -2 and -4, which is what we had the first time. And there we go. X equals -2 and x equals -4. Final answers. Okay? And so the last method we can use is factoring. So I'm going to rewrite the problem just so we can kind of work straight from it. Factoring, we want to go ahead and factor the trinomial. Okay? And since it's x squared in front, I can use a shortcut. But I want to make sure this is equal to 0 before I do anything. So really, we replace the y with a 0 and say that x squared plus 6x plus 8 equals 0, and then factor like we did in the last chapter. So since it's a 1 in front, I've got 1 times 8 is 8. What two factors of 8 give me 6? And it turns out to be 2 and 4. So I can use a shortcut, so x plus 2 and x plus 4 are my two factors. But since it's equal to 0, I'm going to set both of those equal to 0 and solve both. So I'm subtracting 4, subtracting 2, and in both cases I get x equals -2 and x equals -4, which is what we had the first two times. And there we are. That's all three methods of solving quadratics. So let's go to the back side. We're using all quadratic formula. Okay? So, in this case, I've got 1 for A, 3 for B, -10 for C. Make sure you get the signs with it. Don't forget those signs. So x equals -b, which is 3, plus or minus b squared, which is 3 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 1, c, which is -10, not just 10, all over 2 times 1. So as I go through that, it's -3 plus or minus blank over 2. 2 times 1 is 2. So I'm going to put that on my calculator real quick, whatever's under the radical. So 3 squared, so parentheses 3 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is -10. And I end up with 49. Oops. So 49 is under the radical. And now I can go ahead and take the square root. So the square root of 49 is 7, so plus or minus 7 over 2. And now I'm ready to go ahead and split it up. So -3 plus 7 is 4 divided by 2. -3 minus 7 is -10 divided by 2. And so when I divide, I get 2 and -5. And there's my two answers. Excuse me. So x equals 2, x equals -5, and I'm done. All right, so on the next one, I've got not equal to 0, so I need to get rid of that 5x first. And notice I'm putting it in the middle because x always goes in the middle. Always goes x squared, then x, then the constant. And so in this case, I've got a is 2, b is -5, c is -8. So x equals -5, since that's b, plus or minus negative 5 squared minus 4 times a, which is 2, times c, which is negative 8. All of that over 2 times a, which is 2. Okay, so I'm going to put that in my calculator after I get this written down. So negative and negative makes positive 5. And then all over 2 times 2 is 4. All right, so let's figure out what that is. Parentheses, negative 5 squared minus 4 times a, which is 2, c, which is negative, negative 8. And we get 89. So when I take the square root of 89, that's not a very nice number. That's okay. Doesn't always have to be a nice number. So we're going to take 89, square root of 89. That's 9.4. Okay, so now when I get my two answers, 5 plus 9 is 14, so 14.4 divided by 4. And then 5 minus 9 is negative 4.4 divided by 4. And we end up with our two answers. 14.4 divided by 4. It's going to be 3.6, I believe. Yep. And then negative 4.4 is negative 1.1. And there we are. X equals 3.6. X equals negative 1.1. Oops. Did not mean to scroll up like that. 0.1. There we go. All right, last one. Again, we need it equal to 0, so I got to subtract that 10 first before I do anything. Now I've got 2x squared minus 15x plus 29 equals 0. And so, a is 2, b is negative 15, c is 29. So x equals negative b, negative 15, plus or minus big square root, negative 15 squared minus 4 times a, which is 2, c, which is 29. All of that over 2 times a, which is 2. So I end up with positive 15 plus or minus whatever we're going to get under there divided by 9. So let's plug it in. We've got parentheses negative 15 squared minus 4 times a, which is 2, c, which is 29. I think that's all. Yep. And that gives me negative 7. Well, there's two things you can think about. Either know that any negative under the radical means there's no solution, or you can try it. Try and take the square root of negative 7, and it's going to come up with some error message. Okay? So when you can't do this, there's nothing else to do except say, there's no solutions. It's not possible. So no solution. Okay? So that's what your test is going to look like tomorrow. So be prepared for that. If you have questions, we can probably address a couple, but try and address it through email or come in a little early tomorrow, and I'll be there. Peace.